Welcome to episode 2 with Kevin Hollinrake MP for Thirsk and Moulton. This is construction industry, the great industry we all work in, and its governance. Kevin, let's get straight into this. We've got 3.2 million people in construction and the built environment, including obviously residential. Just under 9% of GDP. A lot of workers write into us that they don't feel it's governed correctly. We've obviously talked about, before we started recording, CLC being voluntary, etc. Do you think it's governed in the right way at the moment?
Well, listen, there's always room for improvement. I'm happy to look at any particular changes we need to make. There has been some improvement in terms of things like new homes ombudsman, for example, making sure the standard of new homes that are constructed are of a certain quality. That's currently a voluntary scheme. We were planning to make it a mandatory scheme to make sure that quality is there. That hasn't happened yet. There are some other quality checks and balances through the process, things like NHBC. Most lenders will require some kind of certification, NHBC being one of them, Premier Guarantee being another, to make sure that the homes are built to a certain quality and building regulations have been followed, building control. So there are some checks and balances. Less so in terms of jobbing builders, if you're an extension, which I've got to say, I was business minister, which looked after regulation of our economy. And one of the most often corresponded on matters was, I've had a road builder.
It's a massive problem. I think it's, my point of view, it's mad that tomorrow morning, that guy or girl that's just walked down there can be a builder, turn up in your house, stick it on Acpros, take the back out, disappear with your cash. I've heard rumours, 3 years, we're going to have some sort of order, regulation, governance, licensing, but let's see on that. This is a big one. This was a question, but this is I'm really passionate about this. So we've obviously got a lot of people in the industry worth an awful lot of money, but when you look at the governance, very heavily focused on tier 1, tier 2s with its representation and governance, but they only represent 2% of the industry. So I've got a huge number of us going, what about the 98%, the SMEs, the one-man bands, the 6-gang of brickies? Do we not need more focus on them? Because without us lot, we would kind of grind to a halt.
Definitely. There was an author called G.K. Chesterton once said that too much capitalism isn't too many capitalists, it's too few capitalists. We need to make sure that SMEs are represented well and they have the same opportunities as big businesses. As I built my business, the thing that kept us sharper as we got towards a big national business was new competition. Competition drives everything in terms of the economy, in terms of innovation, in terms of productivity, in terms of efficiency, lower prices, better service. So hugely important we give consideration to SMEs. The good thing we've got right now, I guess, as being in opposition, it's not all good, but nevertheless, that's some good things, is that we can push the government on certain things. And I pushed my own government when I was business minister to have an SME business council. We started off with just a business council, which was all the big guys. And then we introduced an SME business council. It sounds like a perfect opportunity within this to do something similar or have SME representation within that space. Because the tier 1 and tier 2 contractors, of course, they rely themselves on the supply chain. So it's a symbiotic relationship, and we should do more to make sure the SME voice is heard.
Do you think that could be somebody that's time served on the tools? Because my view, when I do the talks at home building and renovating shows, I think, 8-9 years now, the first question, who's the best project manager? QS, architect, engineer, full-time PM. No, someone that's time spent on the tools. Because you're in the ground, you're experiencing things, you're seeing how 9-inch brickwork Victorian house is tied into a new cavity wall extension. Do you agree that I think trades need a little bit more respect, because we're the ones that really work with our hands and build? And I think there's some great people coming to the end of their careers, backs are going, knees shot. I think they'd be brilliant in these.
I agree. It's much more difficult to pull the wool over somebody's eyes if they've been there in the first place. You can't. It's so it makes perfect sense to me. And a business background myself, being a business minister, I always felt it was much more difficult for officials to pull the wool over your eyes. Not that they would do that, but just to say, You don't need to look. There's nothing to see here, Minister. So of course, I think that's absolutely right. I know quite a few people exactly that level, site managers and if some of the big house builders that had exactly that background, chippy, sparky, bricky, whatever. So it certainly makes a lot of sense to me.
Just quickly on governance, safety, health. Unfortunately, deaths through accidents went up to 51 from 38 last year. Suicide, we'll know about, climbing like that year on year for a decade. Anything jump out immediately to you that as an industry we should be focusing on, because things are getting quite bad?
That's terrible to hear. And I mean, I don't know if there's any specific. I'd be interested to see the specific details behind that, and work with you to see if there's a pattern or whether that's just an anomaly. I mean, there's been huge improvements over decades in terms of site safety in the construction sector, not least because you gave directors personal liability for accidents, as you know, health and safety accidents. I know that's a big worry to a lot of people. Wherever level you are, whatever size of company you are, you've got to carry the can for that.
And there are a few serving time.
Yeah, well, exactly that.
So,
and I think the number of serious accidents works dropped by 90% when that was brought in. And something advocated in other parts of our economy in certain situations. So it's great to see the industry generally has a very good record. Obviously worried to see there's been that kind of increase.
well, following week, we're looking at mental health because it's obviously such a huge part of what we stand for here at the Build Network. Plus, obviously, the figures even sadly speak for themselves. Just a couple of quick questions on government. A brickie has said, I've just been done for the second time. My van is broken into, is a polite way where he's addressed it. They've nicked all my tools. What would you do to help protect us tradespeople against van and tool theft?
Well, definitely, it should be something the police are clamping down on. I don't know if you saw a recent a piece by one of my colleagues, Rob Jenrick.
Yeah.
He looked at this. He went to it was much bigger than a car boot sale. It was this big kind of sale at a weekend, and some of these stalls had hundreds of power tools on. Obviously, been nicked to order.
On its top, out of behind.
Absolutely, and they interviewed one of the guys who this had happened to, and he was very, I mean, quite a brave guy, but he knew, him speaking out, he felt it was in threat of his, personal safety.
Yeah.
So we've got to make sure we police the streets properly, and this is as much about people being able to sell dodgy gear as anything else. If you hit their ability to sell stuff, they're less likely to nick stuff in the first place. So better policing.
Which is tough because the numbers are cut.
Well, they were cutting them and then we built them back up again. So we put another 20,000 back on the streets, which is right. Lots of things we need to do to make policing more visible. There should be no-go areas in this country. If stuff is being sold that's dodgy, I don't care who you are, you should be arrested and prosecuted for that. Because underlying all that is the kind of horrendous things that happens to somebody, which can be 5,000, 10,000, even more pounds worth of damage, both in terms of loss of power tools, but also damage to the vehicles.
I'm just going to quickly come back to that. I'm going to bin the other questions because they're quite technical and planning infrastructure bill part 3. Just quickly on this, do you feel that sentencing is very weak for people repetitively because they are gangs?
Yeah.
I've been done. I had someone try and get into my van only a few weeks ago for the second time. My mate round the corner, a brickie I work with, Ed, he got done. It's the only night he's left all his laser levels in. Do we need to clamp down and make that fiercer? So time served in jail, not just a fine and a slap.
What sentences do your people get? The people who did your van?
Not been caught.
Not been caught. Okay, so that's sentencing people who are caught. Listen, instinctively, yes. I mean, I see some of the sentences for all kinds of crimes that are way too lenient, way too light. I would say at the moment the government's saying actually going the other way, trying to avoid putting people in prison even for short sentences. This has real world effect. It's not just the financial loss; it's the hassle, it's the loss of trade, the ability to trade. And in some cases, it'll be people think, "Oh, you can't be bothered with it. I'll pull the industry. It's just too much."
And it's not just pull out the industry; it's take their own life, and we've got first-hand evidence of that, sadly, because without tools, we can't go to work.
Yeah.
Just to explain the bell, it wasn't a fire alarm. It was let me get this right. It was a call to vote.
It's a division bell.
Division bell. That's the word. So We will probably finish this episode here, but next episode, to me, personally, the most important one, which is mental health in construction.